Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to the 7th session of Reimagining Economics. Let's begin our session with the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha. So today our agenda is to go over some of the examples related to the Maqasid methodology. Some of the examples will be presented by Dr. Ildus, and I also have one presentation. And then in the second half of the session, we will have a presentation. We are expecting to Brother Daniel to present on a topic. He's not around. Maybe he will join, inshallah, in the meantime. Yeah. So I give the floor to Dr. Ildus.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. We are in session 7, and we continue talking about the Maqasid methodology and the use of it in developing our thought. So all the exercises, all the talk that we do is basically part of the ijtihad, or part of developing the maqasidi thought. And the whole exercise is important in the sense that we, and this is what we try to present at Maqasid Institute, is that there are some problems, there are some limitations in contemporary Islamic thought, and there is always some tensions, there is always some new developments going on, and there is always something that is holding back some Muslims, maybe as nations, or as individuals, or as groups. And Muslim scholars almost every century used to come up with this idea that something is missing, and that we need to bring back the like original thinking. We need to guide people back to the Quran al-Karim, studying it directly. And there's always been tension between and ikhtilaf between scholars. Sometimes it was like a good type of differences and disagreements. So there was there was the ethical way of disagreements, and there are unethical ways of disagreements, of course. So the history of Islamic scholarship is replete with all different approaches and methodologies and schools of thought, and ours is just one of the schools of thought, which are, in my estimation, this is my personal view, is that it's a part of the Islah and Tajdeed movement. And you've heard also Dr. Zaid talking about this, and we generally, I think, in agreement that this is part of the Islah and Tajdeed movement. And so this course is designed specifically to advance this idea, the idea of maqasid, and apply it to economic phenomena. So we talked about this, and we are going to continue, and the rest of the course, and I think after that after this one we're going to have how many more? I think 3 more, if I'm not mistaken, after we complete this session. So we will try and look and see where and how we can apply this, and what kind of thought and what kind of thinking is expected in this regard. Now, for today's session, I don't have any like presentation files, so we'll just do this. We'll just talk conversational style with you. But I want to start with something just to go back to the idea of the maqasid. And where did we start? And we started with this three main features of the maqasidi thought, which are connectivity, holism, and emergence. But also we look at the orientations like future orientation, critical orientation, and comprehensiveness. And so, what is it? What does it mean actually in practice? So, whenever we talk about the Islam and Islamic scholarship and life in general, we can generally divide all of this into three. Like life in general and the real life is about action. Our business dealings, our muamalat, our relationships in the world between the human beings in society at various levels. Can be at level of family, the politics, at economics, and all other types of social phenomena. And then we have another level is the level of education, where we promote the ideas, where we extend education to different levels of people from childhood and all the way until until people adulthood, well into adulthood, and until they want to continue their studies. So education is another area where this can be applied, and research. So and research is here. It's important in the sense that. And I think you might have sensed also in this book, I mean, the Re-envisioning Islamic Scholarship, it is also presenting the ideas for scholars, presenting the ideas for researchers. How do we start? Where do we start? And what are the important points? And this is where we, the Professor, and we assert that there are some limitations, there are some problems in approaches, in different approaches to Islamic scholarship. And as we talked, Islamic scholarship is not simply fiqh or jurisprudence. It's not simply Sharia or علوم القرآن, علوم الحديث, and Aqidah and علم الكلام. But it's actually more, it's much wider than all of that. And fiqh in general, as we said, it is about the comprehension, understanding of the world around us, and application of the Quranic principles, Quranic and Sunnah principles in life, in whatever the different areas that we have. And so the three areas of application of this methodology are action, education, and research. And so again, the action is anything that has to do with muamalat, and specifically relations between people in real life. And then another one is the education. And this is where, inshallah, next week, we'll also going to talk about the classification of sciences, what we are proposing, the new classification of sciences, and where the economic phenomena, where do they stand? And this is where we propose that Islamic or the economic phenomena, they should be under this term, which is phenomena studies. And we also propose that phenomena studies or Islamic or the economic phenomena is a kind of a transdisciplinary approach to studies. And what does it mean? Is that to understand anything about the real life, it needs to be from various perspectives, and we cannot understand life from only one narrow vision. At the same time, we also understand that there is a need for some disciplines, be it the economics, for example, or be it like medicine or even political science, or psychology and sociology and other directions, other sciences, we cannot have a comprehensive view of everything of the whole picture and provide solutions without really having like a principled approach or the a higher objectives approach. And so this is where scholars have been looking at the ideas of Maqasid al-Sharia from the very beginning. And so here we are. We continue to present those ideas and develop those ideas even further. And this is where we talked about the orientation, the future orientation, critical and comprehensive orientation. So what does it mean in terms of economic phenomena? Is first of all, we need to be able to see where do we stand right now. What problems do we have really in the life problems? I mean, real life issues and challenges that we have. How do we describe them, and how do we understand them? And this is where we need a transdisciplinary approach to analysis. But then, in terms of the future orientation, we also need to be able to see what is the maqsad, what are the maqasid of the economic phenomena, for example, or anything that we do in life. But also, this is done as well in terms of from a comprehensive approach, whereby we look at the past, we learn from the past, and we also suggest something for the future. And this is where it is extremely important to study the revelation directly, also to understand what were the dynamics in Islamic civilization, and what were the differences actually, how the Islamic scholarship has developed, and what were the problems faced by Muslim scholars as well. And what happened that ijtihad really sometimes it went up, sometimes it went down, even though we some scholars argue that there was the doors of ijtihad really closed. I personally don't think so. Doors of ijtihad never closed, but it's just that there was some general problems due to many factors, and not least of which are socioeconomic factors and political factors. And in that relation, I think you can also maybe agree or disagree with Prof. Jasser Uda's classification of some scholars into ulama al-ummah, ulama al-madhab, and ulama al-sultan. So basically, even today, I think we see there is some problem or differences between the scholars who are following the authority, trying to support the authorities, and those who are against the status quo. And so there is tension. There is always this tension. And so what we are trying to suggest in these courses is that let us try and study the revelation using this methodology. And the methodology that was proposed by Professor Jasser Uda, and we at Maqasid Institute, we also follow that. We try to enable ourselves and also our students and participants to follow that. So we want to look at the phenomena by using this methodology, and it starts with the purpose. It starts with the purpose that is in line with the Quran and Sunnah, and with pure intention. But then a very important part of that as well is the cycles of reflection. So this is where it is necessary to think about or to study to study the revelation directly and do it continuously, so that what it does is that it creates this worldview, or the Quranic worldview. And so the more we do it, the more we question it, the more we come to it with a critical mind, the more we understand the message of the Quran. And so in this regard, it is also important to look in the past, let's say from the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and to learn what he did. And as I said, we look at the implication or application of the Maqasidi thought in action, research, and education. And so to devise any type of solutions, like future-oriented solutions to deal with the real-life problems and challenges, we do need to study the Quran directly, as I said, and also the Seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And now, as we know, there is from the Seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we do learn a lot in terms of economic phenomena. And even if we look at, let's say, the time of Medina and how the market was established in Medina, the establishment of the market in the, I think it was in the first after Hijrah. But sometimes there are differences between opinions. Sometimes they say it is in the first year or second year. But regardless, the idea of establishing the market, it has actually a history before that. And that history is important in terms of how and why the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, why he had to move and choose Medina as the place where Muslims could feel easy, could feel safe. And the process, actually, how Hijrah happened, is a strategic thinking. This is where we see, if we really study the Seerah of the Prophet, we see how this whole process of meeting with the Ansar, or meeting with the people from Khazraj, for example, in like 2 years before Hijrah, and then the next year, and the two agreements, or the pledge of Aqaba. Both of this, and also the subsequent all the process of Hijrah, actually it's a strategic thinking on the part of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and of course inspired by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And so right after moving to Medina, Yathrib at that time, and Yathrib was also a relatively large city with a population containing different factions, and there were at least three Jewish tribes, and those Jewish tribes, they had different clans, and also the two Arab tribes, Aus and Khazraj, and they had different tribes as well. And so around Medina, there were also other Arab tribes as well. So there was a lot of going on in the city already, and a lot of infighting, even war between the Aus and Khazraj. But also it supported, this war was like supported by the Jews, and actually they made them fight. So if you study the Seerah of the Prophet and study what actually happened before Hijrah, we see that the Jews actually used this the differences between Aus and Khazraj to their own advantage, and also they were dominating the economic sphere. And so seeing this whole the whole issue the economic dependency of the Arabs when they in the Yathrib. So that one of the first things, actually, the first thing was the building of the masjid, Masjid al-Nabawi, and then the ukhuwa, or the brotherhood between the Muhajirin and Ansar. And the other thing was, of course, the building of the establishment of the market. And it was this way Muslims, they really managed to get this or managed to get the independence. And so this is where the Aus and Khazraj and the Muhajirin and the Ansar, they started to interact more in the marketplace. Its own financial or the economic policies were presented. Also the control over the market happened, and so on. So there was this prehistory, the history before the establishment of the market, which involves the strategic thinking on part of the Prophet and also the other Sahaba, and all of this is done in shura, in consultation between them. And so this is just something that I wanted to share first, just to remind us that this approach is not something new, and especially in terms of action, when we talk about the economic relations at the social level. We talk about the socioeconomic phenomena, and this is about power. It's about politics. It is about the relations between, let's say, at that time, Muslims and non-Muslims, the Christians, and also the Jews and the Mushrikeen. So all of this is very, very complex. And so in order to really produce something workable and strategic, this is where it is necessary to consider all kinds of factors that are involved in this, in whatever the issue that Muslims are facing. And so it is, this is where we can see the advancement of economic thought goes hand in hand with the social and economic and social political advancements, and the establishment of the state, and not least of them, especially during the times of the Prophet. As we said, this also the Sahifat al-Madina, or the or Wathiqa, they call it, or the Dastur, or was the Constitution of Medina. And in Medina, and this constitution is actually recognizes everyone in that vicinity as one ummah. And so the Aus, or the Ansar, the Muhajirin, and the Jews, they constitute one ummah. And so this is where we see also the parts of the constitution that also has to do with economic phenomena. And so you can actually study a little bit more in that on that. And so you'll see as well some issues that are related to the economics. So this is historical, and now how do we see, let's say, what do we do, let's say, in today's situation? And we do have a lot of scholars who are proposing their solutions, and they have been proposing and writing and debating many issues at least since the middle of the 20th century. I mean, if we look at the contemporary economic studies, Islamic economic studies and finance. And so specifically starting from 1970s and 80s, we see that the economic phenomenon is taking more center stage, and Muslims start to study this more. But unfortunately, what we see is that the financial matters, the matters of Islamic banking and finance, take over. And basically, what happens is that we start the imitation, imitating the conventional finance, conventional banking and finance, and we try to come up with solutions which are in the same kind of sphere, in the same kind of system, and we just try to replicate, but using some Islamic or some contracts that are, Arabic sounding contracts. The contracts would be a little bit different, but then anyway, the economic effect are exactly the same. And so this is where the scholars are continuing to debate, and even to the extent that now the Malaysian government is looking into Maqasid al-Sharia as one of the ways to address economic phenomena, to address social phenomena, political phenomena, and so this is where we see more and more involvement of Muslim scholars in this area, Maqasid al-Sharia. And also this is where we see, like I think next week is going to be a global Islamic economics and finance forum as well in Kuala Lumpur. And this was like a follow-up to what was proposed by Prime Minister, I think in February, to hold another meeting, another Islamic economics and finance conference. And this is where they are also having a part where Maqasid al-Sharia is going to be discussed. So this is this is like a preamble, and so we see a lot of challenges today, and I think the reason that you also joined this course is that also to see what is going on, what is the new, whether there is anything new going on, and whether we can develop something, some new ideas or new approaches to study economic phenomena. And lastly, just the last point, and then we will just maybe discuss a few of these things, is that last couple of sessions, I introduced to you the idea of transdisciplinarity. And in that idea of transdisciplinarity, I talked about the need for, like if you remember from last week, I showed you the chart with 3 types of knowledge. So one type of knowledge is the knowledge of reality, that you have to understand what's going on right now. Then you have to have the knowledge of where to go, or the target knowledge, and also the procedural knowledge, or how to transfer from this state, from the state we are now, from the status quo, to a better kind of future. And so in that sense, the transdisciplinarity is extremely useful. This is my personal observation. And so in terms of research, if we let's say in future, if you want to consider, or if you consider writing research papers and presenting your research ideas, that would be one way to look at the look at the reality, and also suggest solutions through this transdisciplinary perspective. And just lastly, I remember one of our colleagues, and also I think he is a part of our group on Islamic economics, or the discussion group on Islamic economics. one of our brothers just stated after my question whether the transdisciplinarity is an acceptable way to study economic phenomena, and I know that I remember he stated that this is the only way to study economic phenomena. And so I want to stop here and let us just discuss for a few minutes. What do you take of all of this and this approach and the Maqasid methodology in terms of how do you see maybe yourself in using it in let's say if you want to write a research or you want to conduct research, how do you see this methodology helping you? Will it change anything that you will do in future? What do you think in general? So I want to have this discussion maybe for like 5-10 minutes, maybe more. So it's an open discussion. Please, anyone is welcome. Yeah, Brother Yasin, yes, please.
Yeah, just to start this off, like I'm not sure like what are the types of discipline that can be used, but right now like I'm taking my PhD in Islamic finance, right? But I have currently a work consulting work with regards to marketing. That's why on some previous classes I've been looking at the discussion on the marketing perspective, even if we're already discussing on the economics of things. So I'm not sure if marketing is another approach, but I'm guessing like marketing, at least the way it's being taught in schools, has its own framework. Like when you are addressing an issue of a corporation, and let's say an institution or a population or a company, then you will look at STP. Like you segment the market first, you target which segment you want to approach, and then you position yourself in that particular segment. And so I think that could also be a way, but I'm not sure if marketing is a discipline that can be used on this transdisciplinary approach. But I'm thinking if I want to like provide an Islamic finance solution to a problem, then I have to identify which segment of the market I'm looking to. But in that segment, I then have to segment the market. Am I looking at the youth professionals or what do you call this, government officials? And then if you're gonna target them, you're gonna say, well, I'm looking at the farmers as a segment. And then if we're gonna target the farmers, what are their behavior, psyches, or something? And so you see that farmers don't have much financial knowledge, but what they need is access to finance, but they don't have understanding of Islamic finance. If that's the realm that they're working into, then how do you position yourself as an advocate of Islamic finance? And then you have to understand that what do they need in this aspect. So I'm not sure, like the idea of transdisciplinary approach, I think it's useful. I'm just not sure if the way I'm coming from would be like, is that the right path? Is marketing as an approach? Is Islamic finance another approach? Can you mix them? Yeah, that's just my take on this, reflecting on this.
Thank you very much. I think marketing is more, it's an interdisciplinary kind of area as well. Because this is where you study not only the advertisement and how to push something onto the consumers, for example, but also you study their psychology. You study how the public policy is related to it, for example. And I think you can conduct a transdisciplinary study of this relationship between marketing and Islamic finance, and how to offer solutions to let's say unbanked population, and how to push the Islamic finance solutions to a certain population. But then, how do you start? Where do you start? This is the question that we at Maqasid Institute, we invite you to study the Quran first. Start with the revelation first and see what are the groups and what are the relationships there. And so this is just to build your worldview behind, so that it's something something that guide you in your future research.
Thanks, Prof. I'll look into that.
Any other? Please, yes, Brother Fawzi, please go ahead.
Naam, I'm finding it very interesting. As a management consultant, naturally, projects that come to me have no boundaries. So the transdisciplinary need is already there in the work I do. And the McCarthy methodology is only allowing me an alternative framework from what I have studied in the traditional, what we will call the Western secular environment, to rethink the processes that I use, the things that I contribute to, and how I contribute to them. And so the McCarthy framework is a wonderful tool for allowing me to rethink the ways we are doing things and actually bring solutions, like you said, that is motivated from Quran and Sunnah more and align more with Quran and Sunnah. So, for example, I have had the interesting recent case of talking to African governments on how to leverage their own natural resources to get better revenue for solving their problems. Because right now, I think the model they are using is, again, not very smart, because they give the natural resources to an international investor who comes in, takes their natural resources, pays them very little in royalties, and all the wealth is gone. And yet they are looking for money to do simple things. Let me give you a very interesting example that just happened. The second lady of Sierra Leone was in Harvard a few weeks ago. She gave a very impassionate speech about how foreign investors are saying Africa is poor, and yet most of the mining in Africa is being done by those countries from those foreign investors. And she talks about how they get very little, 0.005 of the investment that comes in is what they get from this investment. The rest of the wealth goes outside the country, and they are getting nothing. So they are rich in natural resources, and yet they don't benefit anything. So I'm thinking from the Islamic perspective, I'm thinking about advising them to use partnership structure. Why don't they value their natural resource and then allow us to do something like a sukuk, where we bring multiple investors, not just one, so that there is a pool of investors to pull from and bring them in as partners, so that the country is actually getting a percentage of their wealth, their natural resource, that is a fair share. And that is more just to their community. And I'm finding it interesting that the governments want to listen to this. Sierra Leone, Mali, Burkina Faso, they are all looking, they are like, okay, let us talk about it. This is an alternative, and this framework I picked up because I'm thinking about the McCarthy methodology. And a few other projects that we are looking at. For example, how do we use Islamic values and ethos to help affordable housing globally? As you know, I've discussed it with you because of the work we are doing. And this is a very interesting interdisciplinary area that will bring Islamic thinking based on the morals and the ethics that is taught by Islam, to see whether we can leverage some of the tools of Islam like waqf and use that, combine that in a way that begins to look at how to reverse the increasing cost of housing, given that housing is a basic necessity for our society, so that families can rest easy and think about how they can solve their problems. So I think the framework is a wonderful one, and it will significantly change how we think if we are leading with Quran and Sunnah as the basic framework, and then adding on other thought processes from our ijtihad.
Thank you very much, Brother Fawzi. And Shahadatuddin, I know that you and the group there, the economic working group, I think you started working on building on some ideas. And I think what Brother Fawzi has expressed is one area that you can really look into. I mean, it's not only gathering the the ideas and the data about some countries, but also gathering the ideas of what actually can be done. And I think Brother Fawzi's example, you can connect with him. And what do you think? Have you discussed it lately?
No, Jazakallah khair, Professor. No, I think Brother Fawzi's points were really interesting, actually. I think in terms of Africa, I think the problem is primarily they don't have ownership over the extraction process or the actual manufacturing process. So I think the situation is comparable to how big oil used to run back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So the vast majority of the big oil corporations in the world were Western corporations. So I think they used to be referred to as the Seven Sisters. So what would happen is that these big oil corporations would go to territories which had large oil and gas reserves. They would set up shop in these countries and they would extract the resources on behalf of those countries and would end up paying, as Brother Fawzi mentioned, very little in the way of royalties because the vast majority of the work was being done by these large corporations. So what ended up happening, so for instance, in places like Venezuela and I think Saudi as well, they took ownership of the infrastructure, they took ownership of the industry, and I think they mandated that these Western oil corporations had to transfer some of the knowledge in regards to how these processes occurred. So I think in relation to Africa, they're slightly behind the curve in respect to they've not taken ownership of these processes. So I think what you'd find is if they actually mandated that the Western corporations that are extracting the resources, if they were to force them into knowledge transfer, then I think these countries would benefit far more. But yeah, I think the brother made some really interesting points, and certainly I think it would be beneficial to work together, inshallah.
Yeah, Brian, thank you very much, Basharuddin. Any other ideas? Let's say how this, from what you have learned so far. I mean, how useful it is in, let's say, in your either future work or current work. Maybe you've started thinking about some project already. Let's say in your economics department. Dr. Mahdi, do you have any ideas or anything to share in that regard?
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
salam.
just in the countryside, in the middle of nowhere. I don't have very good connection here. I'm listening, mashallah, to all what you're saying, but my camera is not working well, and the sound is not so very well. But so if you hear me well, I mean, I agree with all the concerns the brothers have been and yourself have been talking about, which is, we have to redefine what does it mean to work in economics, or what does it mean to be involved with in Islam about economics. And as brother like Muhammad Fawzi was talking about before, is that there is no moral, there is no ethics when you study economics in the Western society. And so this is what's grounded in our Islamic principles. The fact that you have to be uplifted with our deen, with our all what we know from the Quran and the Sunnah. And I think this is core. This is a core principle we have to first ponder upon, which is we as Muslims, how should we be acting with each other, and how should we be reacting, exchanging with each other when as Muslims. And so this would remove a lot of Western concepts or Western constructs, where at the end of the day, we are just here to satisfy our own wants. And I don't think from an Islamic perspective is what we are trying to achieve here. As Brother Muhammad Fawzi was talking about before, when Western society come in Africa or come anywhere and try to extract something from resources, it's just for their own need and own benefit. They don't really care about what's happening in Africa. They don't really care about what's happening anywhere else. And so that's anti-Islamic. I mean, you cannot go somewhere and just know the people living over there. And so from that ground, I think it's very important to redefine, how, first of all, how each other, how do we connect with each other, and how are we trying to make society better so we can exchange according to some very basic Islamic principles, goods and services, and make our lives better. And so this is not something we can find through Western society, because they don't want to care about those issues. At the end of the day, it's just maximizing some profit for utilities. The only thing they're trying to find and to have. So, if we want to care about our own societies, we have to start working with ourselves and trying to redefine things. So we rely less on Western technologies, or we try. So there is always this trade-off between, what's the role of knowledge, of Western knowledge in Islamic societies, because some of this knowledge might help us to get a little bit better, but might push us to some extreme side where we get too much into the dunya. So it's always trying to strike a right balance between the secular knowledge and how to combine that with the Islamic knowledge. So again, it's a very difficult topic, and even myself, I'm struggle a lot with what I learned over time here in the US or in Europe. But I mean, there is a lot of work to do. So again, I'm really enjoying this class. It's really good. And mashallah, tabarakallah, may Allah reward all of you in that regard. I think we are all very conscious that something has to be done, and rather sooner than later. And mashallah. So I think just having this discussion is very important for all of us here. It has to start from somewhere, and I think this is the right group to start with. And we have very good people in this group, but very knowledgeable people. And I think this is the core of how to move things forward from an Islamic perspective. And I wish I had more time just to go through the Quran and read it again and again, so we can have a strong foundation about what that means, Islamic economics from the Quran and Sunnah perspective, because we have to do. Open the Quran and read it again and again and again, and to have a better, to be empowered with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, told us to do. And mashallah, this is just my 2 cents on this, but I'm really enjoying this class. I'm always looking forward to these classes, and may Allah reward all of you, inshallah.
Ameen. Thank you, Dr. Mahdi. Well, any other thoughts? Sister Shidrati, Ali, do you have anything you'd like to share? And then we'll go to Sister Ambreen. Shidrati, Ali, do you have any? Yeah, go ahead.
Not really. I mean, I'm just listening and trying to learn a bit more on this. I mean, for me, I mean, I'm not an academic, and a lot of this is very, very academic, and I'm trying to understand how this can be practically applied, within the sort of the current reality that we are in. For me, for example, I'm working in a banking institute that is not Islamic, and so how do we bring this to life in that situation, right? It's still quite difficult for me to realize that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, this is a practical example, where and how to do it. You are in a situation where you want to find a solution in a banking settings, and what is the alternative? And if you start looking for alternatives, you will certainly find. And there are many alternatives actually in especially the community banking, cooperative banking, and this kind of, and of course Islamic banking is also part of that. So there are alternatives, and in your jurisdiction, what will work or what will not work. This is where you'll have to study your own situation, your own conditions, and whether it is possible, let's say, to have like a community banking or something that that will help to develop the community or within a community, if it is possible. Or if it is not possible, then there are other, I'm sure there are other organizations or maybe associations that do this kind of work. Yes, Brother Fauzi.
With regard to sister's question, I just wanted to mention a real life example that I was part of the beginning, and I'm pleased with where it has gotten to now. It is called Devon Bank in Chicago. Devon Bank now operates a Sharia solution because, of course, Chicago is a wealthy economy, and alhamdulillah, the Muslims there are very wealthy. So in 2003, at the International Islamic Finance Forum in Dubai, Devon Bank sent a representative. And the reason was that they said that consistently the Muslims had come to them and said, look, we need banking services, but then we need it to be Sharia compliant. And they're like, look, we don't know anything about Sharia compliance, so we can't help you. But the Muslims didn't give up. They kept nagging them and told them, look, we can give you money and we will give you clientele. You just need to give us service. And so in 2003, they sent their man to the International Islamic Finance Forum. For the first time, he came to listen, built a network, went back home. And today, Devon Bank is a success story. Actually, the bank says that it's the easiest banking they have done because actually they don't need to market. The Muslims are marketing the service amongst themselves and they are coming for services. And I can see that, in Ghana, we are having the same issue. We are having the same challenge. And I can imagine that the same is happening globally. So, practical solution is how can we, even in our institutions that are non-Sharia now, look at whether there are demands for Sharia products and see whether we can convince our people to create an alternative window, a department, a subsidiary. It is done in different ways globally, and deliver Sharia compliant solutions to the community that needs it.
Thanks, Brother Fauzi. I think that's something to think about. In my bank, in the bank that I worked with, that I'm working for, they have tried it, and basically it didn't quite work. But I think what needs to happen, I guess, in the case you've given the example, is that there is a majority Muslim population wants that. Or in where I'm working. Sorry.
The strong group that there's a strong Muslim community that needed it. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's one of the things. Whereas I think I guess Professor Ildus, your thing about community. I think we probably need to work with other community. Where I'm from, in Scotland, for example, where the Muslim community is a very small community, to actually see how. So this goes back to the Maqasid, where it's justice based, the just transition and so on, to do with more sustainability and that sort of things can actually help push this. But that's where I'm quite interested in learning in that sense. Yeah, thanks.
If I may, let me also mention this the story of Saxony-Anhalt of Germany. When they came out, when Germany came out of this, when they united, Saxony-Anhalt decided to do infrastructure development and very quickly realized that this interest-free based, not compounding interest on deficit and things like that, made them want to consider alternatives. And they picked on Islamic finance. So they were the first in Europe to actually use Sukuk for infrastructure development. They did that even though Sukuk was at that time putting together the sukuk was more expensive than a traditional conventional bond. But they did that for various reasons. One of them was just to tell the Islamic finance industry, look, we buy into your ethos, we like what you are offering, and we want to make a commitment. And so that was one of the reasons why they did that. But the other thing is that debt servicing kills every community we know. I mean, especially when it is based on interest. And so to use the alternative structures that Islamic finance offered was going to give them a breather on their debt servicing obligations. And so that is another angle that they looked at it. So we've looked at it at just giving it to the retail banking also, or investment banking, but you can also look at it at infrastructure development that is more just and fair, even for the community that will adopt it. So at the higher governmental level with policy.
Thanks. Can you sort of, because I don't quite catch the name, maybe write it in the chat, and I'll have a look. Thank you very much.
Will do. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let's move to Sister Ambreen. She has a few minutes of presentation on one type of application or something that we will discuss. So, Sister Ambreen, that's yours. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much. I hope you can see my slides. I prepared them very quickly. So I'm going to talk about money as an economic phenomenon. I know money is something that we cannot avoid. On daily basis, we deal with money to fulfill our needs, and we are always using money either in the form of notes or digitally to make transactions. So it is a very interesting topic. Money constitutes our daily activities, but we rarely know how money works. What is money actually? We don't really ask these questions. So these questions are important, and they have a very important implication. So I'll just explain some of them. So the way in which we understand the past are crucial to our understanding of ourselves and the world in which we live today. And if our understanding of the past are inadequate, it follows that our grasp of the present will also be inadequate. So if we don't know about the history of money, how money evolved, we will not be able to understand what is money today and how much, what implications that does it have. So it is important to understand the past to comprehend our present. So according to Ingham, who is a sociologist and political economist, monetary systems can be divided into 4 phases. Money accounting according to a standard of value without transfer tokens. When we were just having a unit of account, and there were no with reference to that unit of account, people used to make transactions, but there was no transferable tokens that were circulating at that time, and this was mostly early Mesopotamia. And then the second period is a precious metal coinage system that started in the Asia Minor around 700 BC until the 20th century. The third is the period of dual system of precious metal coinage and credit money. It started from like the 15th century to early 20th century. And now currently the monetary system that we have is a pure capitalist credit money system. So I'll explain some of these in the next slides. So money, usually we deal with money in the subject of economics, but how money fall under the domain of economics, it has a history. Before economics emerged, all these social sciences were under political economy. And so money used to be discussed as a social philosophical even, what is the ontology of money and all. So during the 19th century, end of 19th century or start of 20th century, there was a division of intellectual power, labor. Because of this division of intellectual labor, the topic of money fall under the domain of economics. So in the sociology and economics separated from each other, and they emerged as a separate discipline. So in addition to separate individual discipline, they also adopted different methodological school. They subscribe to different methodological schools. So economics took a physics-like complexion because it wanted to be recognized as a natural science kind of like. Due to the methodological clash between history and sociology in the late 19th century and early 20th century, significantly contributed to the fragmentation of social sciences into specialized discipline. So currently, money belongs to economics, but sociologists are also writing about money accounts. So the classical school in sociology is usually borrow the theories of neoclassical understanding of money, but there is a critical a school of thought in sociology or political economy that is currently writing, and they are writing a criticism of how the neoclassical economists think about money. Also, money can be studied under anthropology and history because it is a historical phenomenon. With the birth of economics, economics basically took the it was invented in the 19th century by Alfred Marshall, and he wanted to make the economics to look like real sciences, and therefore the economics has a suffix ICS that is also with other hard sciences that such as physics and mathematics. So a lot of neoclassical analysis involve mathematics and models, whereby the neoclassical economists treat money as a neutral and in their models. Next, in order to be a money, what is money? It should answer three fundamental questions. Like a good theory of money should answer three fundamental questions: that what does money do? What is money, and how it is produced, and how does it cuts into the society, and how is the value of money determined? If a theory give very satisfactory answers to these fundamental questions, then it pass the test. But the neoclassical economics theory of money does not really give satisfactory answer to these questions. First of all, economists think that money is evolved as a result of like barter inadequacies. So it evolved in the market when people couldn't transact with each other. So in order to overcome the coincidence of wants or reduce the transaction costs, they suddenly spontaneously money emerged as a medium of exchange. What does it do? It just neutral, and it serves as a medium of exchange, and it is neutral. And how is the value of money is determined? It is also determined in the market. So there is only one test to which these monetary theories can be subjected, and which is the test of the history. If they pass this test, then we can confirm them, their accuracy. If they don't, there is no truth in them. So there are basically three theories of money. One is the orthodox or metalist view of or barter theory of money. That is the classical economist theory. This theory is approach strongly applies that money is what money do. So it is a functionalist approach to money. The heterodox understanding of money is the state theory of money or chartalist view of money. In this theory, money has defined social and political conditions of existence. So in order to for something to be used as money, it has to be social, like money is produced socially or by law. So this theory says that money does not evolve in the market or as a result of inadequacies of barter. Rather, from the very start, money used to serve as a social relationship between the profane and the sacred, whereby the obligations or any taxes used to be paid, and this is how money used to be have a hierarchy. Currently, the third theory is credit theory of money. That is that lending creates deposits, and the money is mostly created by banks. So in an economy, most of the money in circulation is bank money in the form of accounting numbers, and a very small proportion of money is in the form of paper notes and coins. These are the some of the theories. So how about the Islamic finance scholars' perspective about the fiat money? So there is this very recent article by Jafar, Abdullah, and Mira. This paper aims to discuss the opinion of current Sharia scholars on the concept of debt money in the present day fiat monetary system. So today's monetary system is debt-based and fiat. They did a quantitative investigation of Sharia experts by distributing a questionnaire to them, and majority of Sharia scholars are also Sharia advisors of the current banking system. So what they found is that most Sharia scholars are unaware of or confused about the mechanics or underpinning of the creation of money, especially with respect to the fractional reserve banking, as it is practiced by both conventional and Islamic banking. So the authors concluded that there is a need that the Sharia scholar need to upgrade their knowledge of the current monetary system, understand it properly, and then decide if this system is Islamic or not. So this is the economic phenomena that I wanted to discuss. Why I chose this topic is because because of the disciplinary boundaries, we have a partial understanding of money. So previously, when there was no disciplinary boundaries between economics, sociology, history, and anthropology, we used to have a better understanding. So in today's world, if we adopt a transdisciplinary approach to economic phenomena, it can give us a proper picture and understanding of the issue at hand. So that's all. If you have any questions or comments, you're more than welcome.
Thank you very much, Samri. Well, this is one topic which is being debated, I think, quite often. And but now I think in the last few years, people more and more understand that the process of credit creation and the money is being debt and really created at time of loan creation. But this is something interesting, especially the last part that you said, that research was done in Malaysia, and in Malaysian settings, even though we understand that the organizations and the scholars representing those organizations, and in Malaysia we know that Islamic finance, Islamic banking and finance is quite advanced. But despite that, we see misunderstanding among among scholars. And I think even a few months ago, we saw a kind of a debate between Prof. Maidin Mira and one more speaker from Indonesia, also professor of economics. And what was evident is that one of the professors didn't know the nature of money. And so it is the nature of modern money. I mean, today, the credit creation. And so this misunderstanding creates also misperception and misunderstanding of the whole banking industry. And so where and how do we apply the how do we understand riba in this connection? If the money is created in the banking system like out of nothing, even though there is some debate, but then still, if the banks create money like this and then they demand interest, whether it is financing fees or profit rates that they call it, is this correct? I mean, is this Islamically acceptable? So there is this debates going on. And I think it is important for scholars specifically to understand the realities. And so that understanding of those realities, especially from the different perspective, it will give us a better view of solutions. Yeah, Daniel, please go ahead.
So can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Professor Ildos.
Alaikum salam.
And assalamu alaikum to Sister Amreen. Thank you for this enlightening presentation. And your idea that, it's the test of history through which, and it really strikes me. I think I understood this while I was reading about technology, because usually, people think that technology is neutral. But if you read history of technology, you also realize that technology is a very loaded thing. However, it's not a question, as Professor Ildos was talking about transdisciplinary approach. So I thought maybe I can, put in a philosophical, what you call, side to it. You see, there is this school of metaphysicians in philosophy. For example, Plato, I mean, he's a big name in that school. He used to say that, there is his theory of universals, that there are universals, and then this world is a manifestation of those universals. I think Shah Waliullah also had this idea. Ibn Khaldun also has this idea. So, I mean, the point which I want to make over here is that as you identified, historical versions of money. So, according to the universalist, knowledge is basically identification of essence or principles. Rest, everything is an accident. So, have you looked at it as to what is common in all of these forms of money? So what is something which is common, so that, maybe it will help us identify some essence or some principle within those versions of or forms of money? Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
What is common is that people accept it, because even if debt is money, money is debt. And we in Islam, we cannot have a concept of commercial debt or debt as money. And I forgot to mention about a hadith here, whereby Prophet said that there will come a time when everyone will be consuming riba. And if the people will not be consuming riba, then the dust of riba will be reaching them. And I believe that the fiat money is the dust of riba that is reaching to all of us. Because if we apply, there is a Prof. Kamil Mira and also Prof. Niazi from Pakistan says that if we apply a strict definition of riba, then all fiat money comes under the domain of riba. So what is common is that people has to accept it, and they accept it because wrong theories are being, are preached to make the confusion. For instance, the credit creation theory is the oldest one, and banks, if you read history, banks came as a result of credit creation. They were never financial intermediary. This is what, based on my knowledge, what I have read so far. They were never a financial intermediary taking money from the depositor and lending it out. They originally started as impersonal financing, and as a impersonal bill of exchange, and they were always credit creator institutions. And then there was a deal between the merchants and the monarchs that the merchants will continue to create this private creation of money. And this was known to our early scholars like Schumpeter and Keynes and others, and even Marx point to it as capital money, and money proper was currency, and capital money capital was the credit money, and they knew that the banks has an active role, and money is not neutral in that sense. But in the 19th century, when economics was emerged as a discipline, the theories, wrong theories were propagated. Until now, if you see any of the economics textbook, they teach the role of money as a medium of exchange, and it does not have any. So if we don't take the if we take money as a neutral, then all the financial side of the economy, we cannot study it. So what is common is that in all these things, that whatever is a dominant form of money, people accept it until they are being told we need to have monetary literacy. We need to create monetary literacy. This is what I believe, rather than financial literacy, to make people understand the system, how it is systematically wrong. Faulty.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sister Amreen, and also Brother Daniel for the question. Does anyone want to comment on this? Yeah, so Brother Mahdi, yeah, the Sahabas were using Roman money for quite some time. When I talked about the establishment of the society, Muslim Islamic society in Medina, and this whole ummah of Medina, they were using basically the gold coins, yes, from the Byzantine Empire, and also the dirham or dirham from the Persian, silver coins, until depending on different reports, the first minting was done during the Umar ibn al-Khattab, and then also some other said that during Umar ibn Abdulaziz and other Umayyad Khulafa. So basically, until then, the minting or the producing, there was no actually the issuance of money by the Islamic State. But what they did is basically it was like a mercantilist idea or mercantilist approach. The money were brought into the system or into the society through trade. But the creation of money by private entities, it is problematic. And but then is creation of money, let's say by a sovereign, is it less problematic? It's another problem. For example, today we have a movement by central banks to introduce CBDCs, like central bank digital currencies. And many people oppose it because it will mean more control of the population, and so that's another area of discussion and debate. But then, what can be solutions? And I think there are alternative solutions there. But since today we have this fiat, I mean, it's basically governments, they impose types of money. But there are different solutions like local, like time-bound money, and some tokens. There are many ways, and even there is one case from Russia, from Russian Federation. I think beginning of 2000s, there was again there was a credit crunch. I think even after the global financial crisis, one of the in my own republic where I was born in Bashkortostan, they had this problem in one farm in one village, and people actually didn't have access to cash, and so basically they couldn't get anything, they couldn't buy stuff, and so the head of that farm of that village. He basically introduced the like token money, local money, which is bound by time, and it must be cashed. It must be exercised only in the certain place, or in one or two shops there. And so this actually helped it helped the society. It helped the community to grow and at least to go through through that difficult time and survive. And even to the extent that well, in other places, people were really becoming bankrupt. In that community, they continued, and the farming work and everything continued, buying and selling continued. So the all economic activities continued in that. But sadly, the guy was sued, and basically they had to stop this experiment. And I think this kind of experiments, they also happened in Europe and in the United States, and I'm not sure in other countries. But then there are alternatives that you can also think about and consider. And also, what we can glean from the Quran is that there is no specific type of money that is, that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants people to use, that it's only gold and silver and nothing else. So there is no message like that. And also from the history, from the seerah of the Prophet, we see that they did not mint their own coins, at least from the very beginning. Even in Medina, after the establishment of the state, and so they survived with trade. And so I think these things we can also consider. Yes, Kashif Jalal, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
So I wanted to point out to a more holistic picture of money. Maybe that would also help us in understanding and arriving at an opinion. So although we do understand that during the Prophet's time, and even during the Sahaba's time, they weren't necessarily creating new money. They were using what was already available to them. However, in the current situation, the way states are organized, states do not have a stable source of revenue. So they depend on taxes, but almost all currencies, or all states run a fiscal deficit. That means they don't have enough money to even run the state, let alone make sure that economies don't crash. That's one problem they have. The second problem is that banks are an inescapable reality in the modern state, where banks create money through deposits. But but there's a parallel cash economy that the banks have to in a way operate in, and they're not able to create currency. So if somebody asks them for they can create deposits as money, but they can't create currency. So that's why they have run on the banks, and banks crash. And then they need intervention from the state to help them out in those situations. So then the state has to create a lender of last resort that creates money out of nothing. So not not just deposits as money, but also currency as money out of nothing. So there are two layers of, in this instance at least, there are two layers of creating money out of nothing, because there is a demand for um, debt to fulfill debts. So debt by definition, a debt is asking for more than the supply of money. And in order for this problem to not crash the situation, they create they offer debt through money, and it's a cyclical thing. Debt is also money, and what they're asking to get repaid is also money is also debt, and what they're asking to get repaid by is also debt. However, there's a hierarchy of what kind of debt are they accepting. So banks create deposits, but people can't create deposits. The private institutions, other private institutions, and people, they can only exchange securities. So if but the bank, when they ask for securities, when they ask for currency notes, the bank has to go back to the central bank. So we in such a situation, if we say that the states will stop minting money, the banking system will crash. And if we say that the banks don't create money, then there will be no mechanism for people to make currency available. So there has to, in order for us to get rid of the money problem, there has to be a holistic change. For instance, the first point I made, you have to figure out a way for the states to create revenue apart from them just relying on the monetary policy. Number two, so that means there'll have to be a lot of nationalization of things that create money. So profit making institutions will have to happen. Number two, banks will have to go as credit creating institutions, so that there's the insatiable demand for credit disappears. And then you'll have to, once that happens, you will be able to get rid of the what central banks do right these days. You will be in a position to get rid of that responsibility. The fourth thing that we have to consider is that especially for backward economies, if we take the case of Japan post World War, even before World War, if we take the case of Germany pre World War One, if we take the case of China post its independence, all of these, and even I would say France during Napoleon's time, all of these economies essentially industrialized through the spending of the state. So the state was able to make to spend its way into becoming industrial economies. And if there is no means of revenue for the state, the only thing the state can rely on is having access to that credit that it can create out of nothing. So so we have to have a solution for this problem too, that if the Islamic polities have to compete with the Western world, they're not industrialized. Even to this date, they're not industrialized, and they depend on Western industries to fulfill their local demand. They're moving towards a tertiary or a service-based economy. So in order for that industrialization to take place, the states will have to figure out a mechanism to make that investment available so that they can industrialize. So those four things maybe we have to consider before we say that since the Prophet didn't do it, we must not create money, fiat money as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Kashif. Well, the issue of debt by itself is that there is nothing wrong in in debt, and it is by itself, it is something that has existed, and even the longest ayah in the Quran is about money, is about debt, ayah to debt, but it has to be it has to be regulated. It has to be controlled somehow. But in terms of just the very last point before we move to Brother Daniel, he has a presentation. So just the last point on this is that you mentioned three countries like Japan, Germany, and China. Japan and Germany, and also China. Those Japan and Germany after the Second World War, and also China after, let's say, 1980s. What they did is basically they introduced small local banks, and that actually provided loans to small local businesses. So it's basically community-based banking, and this is what I think. This is what helped those countries advance. And so maybe less centralization, at least temporarily, so that the credit or financing can be done to finance industrialization, or to finance the real economy, and not the financial economy, but financing the real economy. So that may be like a temporary solution at least. And so we have there are examples of that. So you can actually take a look at what these countries have done, and I think one of the good resources to study, I think, is Professor Richard Werner. You can see what his research is also interesting in that regard. Or you can read Princess of the Yen, also interesting book by him. Okay. All right. About Daniel, please go ahead. I think that's your turn. So it's about 10-15 minutes. You have about 15 minutes, and then we'll discuss, inshallah, before we close.
Okay, so let me figure out how do I share my screen. Wait, yeah, I can.
Yeah, let me give you access, maybe.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Just a minute. We can share all participants. Try now.
Yeah, I think I can now.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes. Yeah. If you can just make it full screen. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yes. Great.
Okay, ji, assalamu alaikum. This is Danial Hassan. I will take you to a very different discipline, I would say, from money to false consciousness. And it's part of a bigger research project which I'm doing. I thought, it will be, it more relates to politics rather than economics. But as they say that politics is the mother discipline. And economics is under politics. So I think it becomes imperative to understand politics as well. However, I have named this small presentation it's called False Consciousness, a Realist Proposal. And you will understand what realist proposal means over here. So, but before I start, I want to give a disclaimer that I'm not a Marxist. What I have observed is that, when you're presenting on public forums, especially, there is a breed of Muslims lately coming up, they have this activist mentality, and they immediately start pointing out, okay, you are a Marxist, and Marx was haram, and this and that. Yeah, I mean, I can do that better than anybody, but the thing is, Islamic value is to learn from everybody. So we can learn from Marx as well. We can learn from Adam Smith as well. I mean, when I'm quoting Adam Smith, it doesn't mean that, I become a free market capitalist. So it is important to give this disclaimer that, when I am indulging with Marx, it's more of an interaction, it's more of a dialogue, it's more of a conversation. Because ultimately it's a dialectic. I mean, we agree or we don't agree. We are living in a modern world, and we are interacting with it. It doesn't mean that if you are interacting with something, we agree with that. Anyhow, so my topic for today is false consciousness. As I said, that it relates to a bigger project in which I am involved with. So what is false consciousness? Basically, primarily, false consciousness is a subjective state in which the individual is unable to realize what the true reality is. I mean, if you talk about false consciousness within the Marxist tradition, it basically means that the socio-political arrangements or economic arrangements which we have, they are inherently exploitative. They favor the bourgeois class. However, the proletariat class is in a subjective state where they, assess those arrangements in such a way that they think that they are real, they are just, they are natural. Because if they think that they evaluate those arrangements in such a way, then their ideas are mystified, and they are in a state of false consciousness. If you take a historical sketch of this idea, well, usually people start from Karl Marx himself. However, I don't believe in this idea that, this idea was proposed by someone. I think that's a bit of a snobbish idea to say that, somebody proposed that. I mean, in the realm of philosophy, I mean, you go 5,000 years ago and you'll find that the idea was there. In philosophy, there is no new idea. All ideas are there. So to say that Marx was the first one to propose this idea, it's wrong. However, to start off, we have to start somewhere. So we can start from Karl Marx. If you read his book, The German Ideology, in fact, it's not a book. These are some manuscripts which Marx and Engels wrote. It's called The German Ideology. I have read the whole book. It's a huge book. I mean, and in that book, Marx gives this idea that it's not just the means of production which the bourgeois class controls. The means of ideological production are also controlled by the bourgeois class. And through those means of ideological production, what they do is they try to colonize the mentality of the proletariats or the masses. And then later in this tradition, you see Antonio Gramsci also talked about hegemony. I mean, hegemony has similar connotations. The idea is based on a similar logic that the rich elites, they are able to, capture or colonize the mentality of the subaltern. Louis Althusser, again, he borrowed this idea of ideological state apparatus, and he also, further developed this idea, how the bourgeois class basically capture the mentality. And then if you see George Lukács, he talked about reification and the consciousness of the proletariat. And surprisingly, Quran, I think, also talks about false consciousness in Surah Al-Asr. Like Sister Amreen always at the end of this session, she recites Surah Asr. So in Surah Asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that man is in a state of loss indeed, right? So there is one connotation of, having a wrong mentality within this ayah, the way I perceive it. So, I mean, this was just a historical sketch of. I don't have time to go into the details of each and every scholar. I just wanted to give you a historical sketch, and I just wanted to emphasize that to some extent, you can see that from the Quran. From Quran also, you can get this idea that maybe humanity is indeed in a state of loss, right? So the way I read it as a state of false consciousness. So what's the problem? What's the problem? What I'm going to do? Well, you see the tradition in which I do research, it's called critical management studies. It's a critical school in management. The basic idea of the school is that the conventional management theory, it has enslaved us, colonized us mentally, because again, it mystifies reality. It keeps the worker and the large, what you call, portion of population in false consciousness, a state of false consciousness. Because inherently the economic, political structures we have, they are unjust. But somehow what happens is that through the discourse of conventional management theory, we are unable to realize that these structures are inherently unjust. So in order to, move away from the conventional management theory, critical management scholars, what they do is they borrow from postmodernism, right? So what they say is that, in order to kill what you call, or to set ourselves free, what we have to do is somehow we have to destroy this conventional theory. So how do we do that? I mean, they say that if we take a philosophical position, which is based on the postmodernist or post-structuralist ideas of reality, then there is no truth. Then, everything is relative. There is no reality. So, if somehow we attach this idea with the conventional management theory loses its hold. because it's not truth, it's just a perspective. So, but what happens because of that, when you do that, you pronounce death sentence for everything. I mean, then emancipation is just an idea. Then, when we say that there is environmental crisis, then on what basis we say that there is environmental crisis? When we say that, there is injustice, on what basis we say that there is injustice? So because of this postmodernist, post-structuralist conceptualization of reality, what they do is they not only what you call destroy conventional management theory, they destroy everything. So they pronounce a death sentence for everything. So theoretically speaking, if the subject has died, so for whose freedom we are talking about? So it's a self-contradictory position which they take. And primarily, the school is influenced by false consciousness. So what they do is they attach the idea of false consciousness with this, strange, absurd idea of postmodernist ontology. It becomes self-contradictory. So, initially, when I started doing research in this area, I realized that this is a problematic area, but postmodernist virus has swept the Western academia. And a large portion of those scholars, especially the tradition in which I do research, they come from the postmodernist school of thought. So, and if you look at the previous conceptualizations of false consciousness, you realize that at most of them, what they do is they tell us what the system is. I mean, fine, it is good to know what the system is, but then it's always a dialectic. It's not just a system; it's an individual which interacts with the system as well. And ultimately, reality or meaning is produced by the interaction of an individual and the system. It's a dialectic, right? But theoretically, if we take a postmodernist position, then we don't have any essence to assign to the individual. So theoretically, we don't have any space for the individual. We need to create space for the individual. And then we have to show how he or she interacts with the system. And then, based on that, we can propose something. So what I and my colleague, we opted to do was we were like, okay, fine. We will move away from the system discourse. We will try to understand what are some of the agential bases of false consciousness. How an individual thinks, what are some of the bases of his sense making, so that we can propose something as to that's why there is false consciousness. Because as I said, Quran also to some extent, gives this impression that humanity is in a state of false consciousness. So the idea is right, but then the explanation has to be right as well. So what we did was we took a realist philosophical position based on critical realism. We tried to collect some data through some software houses in here in Islamabad mostly, and some in Lahore as well. So what I'm going to do is I hope the problem is clear, right? So what I'm going to do is just going to pick a very small part of the research and present it to you, and it will relate with false consciousness. I cannot go into details of the study because I don't have time. Okay, so based on the data which we collected, if you see this slide, it basically tells you how an individual thinks. In order to understand the sense making of an individual at a very macro level, what you can do is you can conceptualize it as concentric circles. The inner circle is basically the person himself. That's why I call it I, or the individual. But based on the data, we could see that the individual makes sense of him or herself. Now I'll be slow over here. So I need your attention over here. So based on the data, the individual makes sense of him or herself. Or in other words, you can say that the individual realizes himself within a context. So there are two broader categories of any individual sense making. One is the individual himself, but around the individual, you have a category, a schema, which is the context of self. So individual makes sense of himself within a context, which means the individual realizes himself sense-making wise, perceptual wise, within a context. This tells us that a human sense-making has a schema inbuilt within the mind, and that is the organizational schema within which the individual makes sense, right? This schema never, most of the time, if you see individuals, they don't break this schema. This schema always remains intact. But the problematic part is, if an individual is making sense like this, so individual's epistemic reach or gaze is just up to the self-realization. because the individual is only making sense of the context as far as the context enables the individual to make sense of himself. The individual does not go beyond that. So it means that the individual, sense making wise, is restricted up to a very small limit. And within that limit, the individual makes sense of him or herself. So primarily, it's about realizing self, but that realization has to come within a schema, within a context. Due to that, the epistemic gaze of an individual is restricted. Now, this is the idea which you have to keep in mind. So what's the problem then? The problem is lived reality is much bigger. Lived reality is not just restricted to the individual sense making. Lived reality has multiple other dimensions which are broader than the individual sense making. So this picture, if you see, you realize that in the middle you have an individual, the smiley face in the individual. And if you see, I don't know whether I can, how can I point it? But if you see the dotted lines, the smaller dotted line, what it does is basically signifies the epistemic reach of an individual, right? So through this picture, what I'm telling is that the reach of the individual sense making is very limited. But the lived reality is much bigger. Organization is not just a culture which is impacting the individual. Organization has a political side as well, as to who owns the organization, how profits are distributed. There is an ideological side of an organization as well, right? Based on which idea the organization is constructed. So if you construct the total spectrum of reality, you realize that total spectrum of reality is much bigger as compared to the epistemic gaze of an individual. So if you juxtapose the individual sense making and the total lived reality, you see that there is a gap between individual sense making and the total lived reality. As you know, I have mentioned blind spot. If you see the diagram, you will see that there is a blind spot, space for false consciousness. Since the individual, because of the limit of contextual realization of self, cannot or is not interested in other parts of the reality, he or she is unable to realize what the reality within that realm is. Now the trick is, politics is about power. In order to take political decisions, an individual has to be outside power, not inside power, right? But because of the sense making, the individual most of the time remains within power. So since the individual is within power, they are unable to realize the political aspects of reality. So they are unable to realize political aspects of reality. This is the realm where false consciousness is possible, right? So that's why when Antonio Gramsci or those stalwarts like them, they were talking about false consciousness, they were talking about false consciousness in the political realm. Now we have some agential explanations as to, why false consciousness is possible within that realm. Now this begs the question, if this is the case, then how do we make sense of emancipation or politics then? You see, again, I want to wrap it up. I don't have time to go into that. I will quote Rumi over here. I can quote many philosophers as well. I mean, I can quote philosophers from the Islamic tradition. I can quote philosophers from the Western tradition. Both pre-Socrates philosophers as well, and some late philosophers as well. The idea is that Maulana Rum said, all people on the planet are children, except for a very few. No one is grown up except for those free of desire. Now you see, individual is locked up to his desires most of the time because they are thinking to realize themselves most of the time. That's why Maulana Rum said, majority are children. Why? Because, they are self-centered. They are only thinking about themselves. If this is the case, then they are not positioned for politics. Because as I said, for political decisions, one has to be outside power, not inside power. Because if you're inside the power, you cannot take what you call political decisions. You don't have the what you call epistemic requirements to take those decisions. So, I mean, there are a lot of lessons which we can take from it, but then, I just finish it up with some lines from Iqbal. I'll translate it if I can. He said that, I mean, this is an idea about emancipation. He said, Tamanna abru ki ho agar gulzar hasti mein. तो कांटों में उलझ कर जिंदगी करने की खू कर ले सनोबर बाग में आजाद भी है पाबगुल भी है इन्हीं पाबंदियों में हासिल आजादी तू कर ले. Let me quote Cicero, the celebrated Roman aristocrat. He used to say that we follow law so that we can be free. That's what the idea is here. That freedom is not about a flat system. Freedom is about comfort. Freedom is about respect. Freedom is about, having a just society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Daniel. This is really interesting. I mean, for me specifically, because I am interested in epistemologies and in philosophy in general, but not as much as you are. I'm not really into it. But then it does have it touches on the economic phenomena as well, and on political phenomena, and how some people actually decision making.
Professor Eldus, I'm sorry to cut you. Can I show one more slide if you allow me? I'm
Yeah,
really
go
sorry.
ahead, please. Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
really
Go ahead,
wait.
please. No problem, no problem.
Okay, so Professor Eldus ordered me to do another activity, and that is to connect this idea with the Maqasid methodological framework, which we have discussed. And I did that. I tried to do that, although not in a very detailed way. You see, if you see this pyramid based on the empirical data which I have collected, it seems that the society is hierarchical. Society is not flat. So as Ibn Khaldun said, we have to be very sure about the ontological structures. As Prophet ﷺ used to ask this dua from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that show me the reality of things. So understanding the reality of things is very important, because if we do not understand the reality of things, we'll not be able to, judge them in a better way. So based on the data which I have collected, it seems that the society is hierarchical. So if I try to connect with the framework of Maqasid, I think that was a slide which was prepared by Dr. Basma, in which she delineated the Islamic worldview. So at a macro level, it talked about three things: purpose, connectivity, holism. So the way I see it, if you see hierarchy points up, which symbolically speaking, it points towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think, if I'm not wrong, I've heard some scholars say that, this hierarchical nature of society is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So if we take purpose as Tawheed and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so there is some indication that, this hierarchy points towards up, which means it is pointing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as connectivity is concerned, I would say that, yes, we have to connect the moral side and the material side. But then, I think we have to keep the moral side up and the material side down. Why do I say that? Well, I will attach with the idea of holism. You see, symbolically or metaphorically speaking, when you want to see a lot, what you have to do is you have to stand at a higher position. Then you can see far, right? But if you're standing at the bottom, you cannot see further or far. So morality is a higher realm. In order to include everybody, I think if we take a moral perspective, then to some extent, the way I understand that, it is more holistic, it is more inclusive. Instead of taking a material view, I think we need to take a moral view, because morality is higher to materialism. And when you symbolically stand at a higher position, you can see quite far. And that's what the requirement of holism is. In the end, I would quote Martin Lings in his book. I think he wrote a very interesting thing. He said that our less recent ancestors knew that they had come down from above. 20th century man is alone in thinking and in priding himself that he has come from below. So we have to take a up view rather than a below view. And I think if we take a up view, symbolically speaking also, we can, be very inclusive. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. Well, there are obviously there are implications for that, for false consciousness, and how people make decisions based on personal implications rather than societal, and also without the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, Islambreen, please, you have a question.
It was really interesting topic. I just want to say that what is the implication of false consciousness when we make theory? Does it has a implication for our worldview or methodology in the sense that I see that as you said that if we take the higher human coming from up, that makes a different thing rather than evolution theory. Do you think evolution theory was a false consciousness?
Well, I would say that philosophically speaking, whenever you try to understand something, you always take a position. It is not possible that you can understand something without taking a position, right? So methodologically speaking, false consciousness tell us that we have to take a position which would enable us to come out of false consciousness. Because I've been interacting with economists for some time now, and I realize that they are in a state of false consciousness. They think that this logical positivistic kind of conception of reality would enable them to solve economic problems. And they think that a lot of problems are within the economic realm, whereas maybe the problems are not within the economic realm. So I think in that perspective, you see that you can see this problem within the economists as well, right? So it might help you philosophically understand that you need to take a right position first, which is, I mean, you can call it in many ways. Some people call it paradigm, some people call it episteme, some call it a priori assumptions. The problem is human sense making is dependent on a paradigm, on an episteme, on a priori assumption. I mean, we cannot take a position in which we say that we are neutral. I mean, if you are neutral, you'll remain neutral. As John Locke said that, we are born with a blank slate. He's absolutely wrong. We are not born with a blank slate, because if we remain blank, we are born with blank slate, I think we'll remain blank slate. So, I mean, I've been thinking on this issue as well before the presentation, which you asked, Mr. Breen, that how can I, relate with the economic phenomenon? And I was aware that this course is about economics. So, I mean, at the moment, what comes to my mind is that this view helps us understand some of the what you call philosophical problems within the economic discipline, I would say. I hope it addresses to some extent your concern.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides some guidance for these kind of issues. And even Shafi'i, he stated that about the Surah Al-Asr, that he said that if it was the only ayah that was revealed, that would have been enough. And if you read this surah, with a lot of thought, and you give a lot of thought to it, and it starts with this: "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, wal 'asr, innal insana lafi khusr." So man is in loss. Now, this al-insan, it can be an individual or it can be all humanity. So al-insan here, as the word itself, even though it is in singular, but it also has a plural meaning. But then what follows after that, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, whatever follows afterwards is actually in the plural. So except for those who, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do good, and help each other in patience, and help each other towards the truth. So this false consciousness or the humanity can be at a loss unless we have this few things, which is belief and correct belief, and the connected to it is the action, and action itself needs to be towards the patience and something towards something good. All right. So otherwise it is just false gods, false ideas, false ideologies, and so on. And in Surah An-Nisa, I just want to also very quickly quote from Surah An-Nisa 135. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى. And here he says, do not follow your desires. أن تعدلوا. Do not follow your desires or inclinations, lest you be unjust. So basically, we have to be aware of ourselves. We have to be aware of this al-hawa and all the problems that can lead oneself towards injustice. And I think some ideologies, they can lead people to injustice through this false ideologies, false consciousness, creating this thing. And in terms of how does it all relate to economics and economic thinking, is that what do we follow basically? What is the authority that we follow? Well, is it the mainstream, let's say, economic thinking, or maybe, or is it the revelation? Or is it the let's say the scholars of the past, or scholars of the present? This is where we also have to really think: who do we follow? Where do we place authority in our decision making? And then based on that, we can already think about where do we place, how do we make decisions, economic decisions, political decisions, as individuals and as ummah, as societies. And this also has related to the solutions that we talked about, like Brother Fauzi has suggested some solutions. Even and the community, let's say that community in Chicago, they insisted, they needed a solution, and they insisted on finding that solution, because they came up, they were thinking from that perspective that there is a problem, they need to advance, but the current solutions, like banking the products, they're not suitable for them, and so they try to find, and they basically a banking institution supported their looking for a solution. So I think it's very important to understand ourselves, understand our relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these philosophical questions that we have, I think they're extremely important in terms of ontology, who we are, where are we going, and where is the authority in terms of epistemology, or the knowledge that we acquire. Well, anything else? Anyone else would like to comment on Brother Daniel's presentation, or any other point that we touched upon today?
Yeah, if I may say something, sorry, I still don't know how to raise my hand in Zoom.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I don't want to cut you off here, but thank you, Brother Daniel, and also Sister Ambreen here for the nice presentation. To go back to Brother Daniel's presentation, I think this is right on point here, trying to focus on the individual's motivation here in his or her own realm. And understanding that, I think in our tradition at least, working on ourselves is really key first, and we have to start with ourselves. And this is our teaching as far as I understand here. And this is particularly true for economics here, where we have microeconomics, macroeconomics, and we cannot, at least what I think here, just work at the macro level, ignoring the microeconomics. And at least in Western society, if you take economic classes, 70–80% of them are microeconomics. Macro is about like 20 to 30%. And within macroeconomics, the share dedicated to money and transaction is maybe like 5–10%. And so I think it's very important, before we work on Islamic finance and Islamic transactions, or Islamic, which is very important, because we all know that it's riba based everywhere. I'm not denying that. But I'm trying to say here that if we ignore the other 80% of economics and try to focus on only the 10% of transactions, we just being oblivious of what's happening in the realm of economics here. which is how to create things, goods and services, how to exchange them, with what intention, what is, so I think Brother Daniel is right on point here, where, where is our connection with God when we work about macroeconomics, or especially at the microeconomics, okay? When we try to create goods and services, when we're trying to consume goods, when we're trying to exchange, when we're trying to allocate resources, where is our connection with God? And once we have that, then we can create a whole system around it. We can create, a whole institution, Islamic institution, that helps us toward our goals. But if we start with the institution and then work on the individual, then I don't think we're going to have anything right here. We can have a perfect monetary system, but with no riba. But if at the end of the day I'm trying to screw Brother Daniels, and I'm trying to cheat on all of us, that's not going to go. It's not going to do any good here. So the economic system is such that if I'm trying to maximize my own wants and maximize the money I can hold on a daily basis, it's not going to do any good to society here. So I can work in a perfectly Islamic economic system, but if I don't have the right intention, at the end of the day, it's useless. And so I think it's very important to understand what we're trying to do in economics before we work. At least at the individual level before working on the institutional level. And I think what Brother Mohammed Fawzi was trying to say with Devon Bank is great. I'm all for it. We have dozens of Islamic banks in the US. But if you talk, I have the chance to talk with the president of Lariba Bank. I know a few people in guidance, in Ijara, Devon. I have also met with a few people. But at the end of the day, if you try to scale at the country level, you're going to be dealing with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You're going to be dealing with all the institutions where the scaling is an issue here. So there are many. Every city in the US has smaller, as Dr. Idris was saying, we have smaller banks, local banks, individuals, where you can have a few brothers trying to collect money and through this mechanism trying to buy a few houses. It's not going to be dozens and hundreds of houses, but you can do things locally, okay? And I think from an Islamic perspective, understanding what we can do locally is much more important as we can, the thing we can do nationwide or even intentional from an international perspective. And so again, it's the whole the idea, as Brother Daniel was saying, that at the individual level, at the micro level, what is our connection with God and what is our intention here? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve here? And so I think this is very fundamental, because the whole Western sciences are based on, there is no vertical dimension. It's just trying to maximize what's happening down on Earth here. And so even if you can do that with an Islamic way of doing transactions, I think the verticality, is still going to be missing if we don't work on ourselves first and foremost here. And this is particularly true with economics, where in our daily basis, when we consume, when we create something, what's our connection with God? And we don't have to work with fiat currency. I mean, this is the problem. I'm not denying the problem here. But it's always struck my mind with what would we use coin from our enemy. I mean, I'm talking about the Sahabas, from the Persian Empire, Byzantine, but why would you use their coin to be the most righteous people on earth? And to me, it's always bothering me. I mean, why is that? Why is that? Why in the Quran they say, travel the ocean, through this boat. When you're traveling the oceans, big have control of Allah, because you can't pray it just because of Allah. Otherwise, it would just wreck all those boats of the ocean. So all the idea that we know that we have resources spread out on earth so that we can learn from each other, we can help each other, and not, abuse because we have access to some technology, our brothers, around the world, because they don't have knowledge on how to use their own resources. And so anyway, that's just my 2 cents on these things. But thank you, Brother Daniel and Sister Amber here.
I would like to add something, if you allow me.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I think Brother Oliver has picked a very important aspect, and he is absolutely right. And if you, analyze it through Sufi tradition, you realize that Sufia, they always talk about, realizing who you are. And this data tells us that most of the individuals are locked within themselves. That's why the Sufi are always, emphasizing that, free yourself from yourself. So I think that is very important to realize that. But on the other side, I would say that, know thyself, as Mr. Emreen wrote. So I think, yes, that's a very important dimension. And now we have some empirical basis to, say that, yes, it is important what the Sufi are saying. But one positive side which I would like to point out, there are many sides of this aspect we can talk about. However, this is Allah's blessing as well, that some people are locked, majority are locked. Because if majority are free, then there will be chaos as well. Society is possible because we have a hierarchy. Otherwise, society, organization, order will not be possible. So, I mean, this hierarchical arrangement, I think in one of the surahs, I think in Surah Yasin, I forgot. I think Professor Ildos would know. He has more readings of Quran than me. So I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has talked about this aspect that I have made some superior and some inferior, so that the worldly affairs would be managed or would go on like that, something like that, if I'm not wrong. So that ayah indicates that the society is hierarchical, but it is a blessing in some sense as well. It's not just that, it's a wrong thing that because of which we have false consciousness. That aspect is problematic, but then there is a positive side to it. But I agree with Oliver, brother Oliver. I think he has picked a very important dimension. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, Alhamdulillah. We already passed the hour. I think we can stop now, and if you like, we can continue after we stop the recording. So, Sister Amreen, if you could end the session. Unmute, please. Amreen, you are muted. Unmute yourself, Sister Amreen.
Sorry, I forgot. So thank you so much, all the participants, for your time and active participation. May Allah help us to benefit from the knowledge that we shared with each other, and may Allah make us to grow a better human and Muslim. So inshallah, we will be looking forward to other participants to prepare for the presentation in the next session. And with that, we end the session. I wish you all a good weekend and a very productive next week. Let's end with the Surah Al-Asr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.